You've spent your whole life chasing the light, trying to be the good one, the calm one, the kind one, the one who never breaks. You learned early that love is something you earn by dimming the parts of you that make others uncomfortable. Your fire was too much, so you made yourself smaller. Your sadness was inconvenient, so you hid it behind a smile. Your truth was too loud, so you learned the language of silence. You called it maturity. You called it strength. But somewhere along the way, you began to mistake numbness for peace. You became a master of self-control, not realizing that control, taken too far, becomes a cage. You filled your life with light, but only the kind that doesn't reveal too much. And yet, in the quiet moments, when the world stops watching, you feel it. That pulse beneath the surface, that ache that doesn't have a name, the soft knocking from the other side of your own heart. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." But how could you know that when the world told you light was everything? They taught you to fear your shadow, as if the parts of you that ache, that rage, that crave, were sins instead of signals. You built a shrine to your better self, the one who always says the right thing, always forgives, always rises above. But that shrine became a mirror, and behind that mirror lives the person you buried to survive. You see, the light isn't wrong, but it's incomplete, because without darkness, light becomes blinding, a performance of purity that hides the truth of your depth. What if your flaws aren't flaws at all, but fragments of a larger truth you've never been allowed to hold? What if your anger is not a defect, but a defense of your worth? What if your envy is not poison, but proof that your heart still dreams? What if the things you hide are not meant to be erased, but redeemed? You cannot find your wholeness by cutting yourself in half. You cannot heal by pretending you are only light. The light is beautiful, yes, but it's the darkness that gives it meaning. So maybe enlightenment isn't about becoming brighter. Maybe it's about becoming real, about standing in the full spectrum of who you are, the holy and the haunted, the gentle and the furious, the broken and the becoming. Because light without shadow is illusion. And the self you've been taught to worship is only half alive. You've been taught to smile when you want to scream, to stay polite when every cell in your body aches to speak the truth, to say, "It's fine," when it isn't. You learned that silence keeps the peace, even if it shatters something inside you. You learned that being good earns love, even if it costs you your soul. Every time you swallow your truth, a piece of you slips into the dark. And those pieces, the unspoken, the unseen, they don't vanish. They wait. They linger in the quiet corners of your mind, echoing through your dreams, haunting your calm with the sound of your own suppression. Carl Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because to do that, you must face the person you've been hiding. The self that still feels rage, that still envies, that still longs for what it was once denied. You've spent years constructing a mask, not to deceive, but to protect. You built it from politeness, from control, from the need to belong. And yet, the more flawless the mask becomes, the more invisible you feel beneath it. There comes a moment, quiet, sacred, and unbearable, when you realize the version of you that the world celebrates is not the one your soul recognizes. And that realization cracks something open. Because authenticity is not about shining. It's about shedding. It's about unlearning every performance you created to survive a love that demanded perfection. The face you hide, the one that trembles, that doubts, that still grieves, is not your weakness. It's your doorway. The entry to everything real, everything raw, everything alive within you. You were told to choose, be light or be forgotten. But you were never meant to choose. You were meant to integrate, to stand in the sacred space where opposites meet. Jung said, "The shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door, whose painful constriction no one is spared who goes down to the deep well." And that is what the hidden face truly is, a passage, a descent into the well of your own becoming. Your darkness speaks, but not in words. It speaks in patterns, in the people you're drawn to, in the habits you can't break, in the emotions that rise like tides when you least expect them. You call it bad luck, you call it fate, but it's not fate, it's communication. It's your unconscious speaking in the only language it knows, symbol, emotion, repetition. Every irritation, every jealousy, every moment of shame, it's not random, it's revelation. It's the psyche tapping your shoulder and whispering, "Look here." This is where you lost a part of yourself. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that is the heart of it. The shadow doesn't punish. It mirrors. It reflects every truth you refuse to see. You say you want peace, but your anger rises again and again, demanding your attention. You say you want love, but you choose the same kind of pain, again and again, as if trying to rewrite an old story that never had an ending. That's not madness. That's memory. The memory of your soul trying to speak. The shadow is fluent in paradox. It shows you what you hate so you can discover what you lack. It sends you envy so you can recognize your buried desires. It wounds your pride so you can learn humility. It unsettles you, not to destroy, but to wake you. Because the psyche will not let you rest in illusion. It keeps sending the same lessons, the same faces, the same heartbreaks until you finally listen. You think your shadow is darkness. It isn't. It's your truth, unfiltered. It's your raw humanity before it learned to wear a mask. Every time you reject it, it grows stronger. Every time you meet it with compassion, it begins to transform. Because your shadow doesn't need to be conquered. It needs to be understood. It speaks in dreams, in the strangers who chase you, in the rooms you can't escape, in the endless falling that wakes you in the night. Each dream is an invitation, a map drawn by your unconscious, a mirror made of symbols. And when you begin to listen, truly listen, you realize something miraculous. Your shadow is not separate from you. It's the root system of your soul. It's where your deepest creativity sleeps, where your untamed intuition lives, where your most authentic power waits, patient and unclaimed. The shadow teaches by contradiction. It wounds so you can learn empathy. It humbles so you can learn strength. It breaks you open so the light can enter from within. This is why Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Because awareness is not gentle. It burns away illusion. It forces you to see what you've buried beneath the roles, the ambitions, the polished self. But once you begin to see, once you can name the voice that rises from your depths, something inside you shifts. You stop running from the dark. You start conversing with it. And slowly, the shadow stops speaking in chaos and begins to speak in clarity. It tells you what you truly want, what you truly fear, what you truly are. And that is the first taste of freedom. Not the freedom of perfection, but the freedom of wholeness. Because when you make peace with your shadow, the war within you ends. And that is when your real life begins. There comes a moment, not loud, not dramatic, but quiet, like the stillness before dawn. A moment when you stop running, when you realize that everything you feared has been chasing you not to devour you, but to return home. You sit in the silence of your own undoing, and suddenly you understand the shadow was never a monster. It was your reflection, distorted by fear, waiting to be recognized. For years you tried to destroy it, through discipline, through denial, through perfection. But every time you silenced a feeling, it came back as a symptom. Every truth you avoided returned as pain. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." And now you know why. Because what you call darkness was never separate from you. It was the part of you that loved you enough to refuse to disappear. You've spent your life chasing light, but it's only now, in the dim glow of your own honesty, that you begin to see clearly. The shadow is not an intruder. It's a child of your own soul, left behind when you learned how to be acceptable. Every rejected impulse, every silenced truth, every forbidden dream, they gather there, waiting for you to open the door. You feel it now, a pulse beneath the pain, a warmth beneath the fear. The beginning of forgiveness. Not for others, but for yourself. You start to remember the moments you betrayed your own truth. Every time you said yes when your heart screamed no. Every time you smiled to keep the peace, while something sacred inside you cracked. And you realize you don't need to hate those versions of yourself. They were trying to survive. They did the best they could with the love and knowledge they had. Forgive them. Forgive the parts that lied, the parts that hid, the parts that hurt others out of fear. Because beneath all that confusion, there was always love, a desperate, clumsy attempt to be whole again. You begin to see that healing is not about cutting pieces away. It's about gathering them back. The strong and the fragile, the kind and the cruel, the light and the shadow. Each fragment returns like an old friend. Some come crying, some come silent, some come raging with the pain of being forgotten. And you open your arms. This is the reunion. Not a moment of triumph, but of tenderness. You look at your darkness and for the first time, you don't turn away. You whisper to it, "I see you." And it whispers back, "Finally." In that exchange, that sacred, trembling recognition, something ancient begins to heal. The divide between who you are and who you've pretended to be starts to dissolve. You feel it, a merging, a quiet alignment, a wholeness that doesn't need to perform. And for the first time in your life, you are not chasing light, you are emanating it. Because the light that burns from within is born from darkness understood. Carl Jung once said, "I would rather be whole than good." Now you understand. Goodness is a costume. Wholeness is truth. You don't need to become someone new. You only need to welcome back what was lost. Your shadow isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to return you to yourself. The reunion is not a destination. It's a rhythm, a lifelong conversation between who you are and who you're becoming. And in that conversation, you finally find peace. Not the peace of perfection, but the peace of inclusion. The quiet knowing that everything you've been, everything you've felt, everything you've feared, belongs. You've spent so long trying to escape the darkness. You never stopped to ask what it wanted to show you. You thought healing meant light without shadow, peace without conflict, love without loss. But light without darkness is only glare. Peace without struggle is only numbness. Love without loss has never been tested, and therefore has never been real. The dark was never your enemy. It was your teacher. It stripped away everything false so you could finally meet what's true. Carl Jung said, "The gold is in the dark." And he was right. The treasure you seek, the courage, the creativity, the peace, it doesn't wait for you in the light. It's buried beneath the ruins of what you've avoided, because power doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from walking through it, from feeling everything you once swore you couldn't survive. Every time you face what you fear, you reclaim a piece of yourself. That's what the fire in the dark really is. Not destruction, but illumination. A light born from friction, from the meeting of opposites, your suffering and your strength, your fear and your faith, your shadow and your soul. You can't ignite that fire by pretending. It only burns when you're honest, when you finally stop running, when you let yourself feel what you've buried beneath years of composure. The fire begins as a spark, a tremor in your chest, a truth you can no longer silence. It hurts at first. It always does. Because awakening isn't gentle. It burns away everything that isn't real. And then, silence. Stillness. In that quiet you realize you are no longer afraid of the dark, because you have become the light within it. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And to do that, you must descend into your own depths, into the grief you avoided, into the anger you repressed, into the power you forgot was yours. You must walk into the darkness, not to fight it, but to listen, to understand, to claim what was always meant for you. The dark will test you. It will strip you bare. But when it's done, you will stand radiant, not because you escaped the shadow, but because you made it your ally. And when others see your light, they won't realize what it cost. They'll only see the glow, never knowing it was born from the very fire you once feared. So the next time you find yourself lost, standing in the ruins of what you thought was the end, remember this: that's not the end. That's initiation. Because the darkness isn't trying to destroy you, it's trying to awaken you. And that voice rising from the depths, that trembling ancient whisper, isn't the sound of your undoing. It's the sound of your becoming. There comes a moment after the descent, after the fire, after the breaking, when the darkness no longer feels like an enemy, and the light no longer feels like a prize. You simply breathe. And for the first time, your breath doesn't feel borrowed. It feels like yours. The war between who you were and who you are becoming finally quiets. The noise fades, and in the stillness that remains, you hear it, a soft hum, deep and ancient, the sound of your own being. You have walked through the underworld of your psyche, and you did not emerge untouched. You are marked now, not with scars, but with symbols. Every wound became a doorway, every shadow became a teacher, every silence became a song you didn't know you were singing. Carl Jung said, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." And now you see it. The pattern, the symmetry, the divine intelligence woven through your suffering. You realize that your darkness was never the opposite of light. It was the womb of it. that every ending was not a failure, but a seed, that every loss carved space for something truer to enter. You begin to move differently. You no longer chase meaning, you embody it. You no longer seek love, you radiate it. Because you understand now, what you were searching for was never out there. The light you spent a lifetime pursuing was always hidden behind your own eyes. And this quiet knowing, is not enlightenment as you imagined it. It's not a crown or a halo. It's a return, a remembering, a homecoming. You walk through the world softer now, not because you are weak, but because you no longer need armor. You've learned that vulnerability is not the opposite of strength. It is strength, refined by truth. You meet others differently too. You see their pain without judgment because you've touched your own. You see their masks and you don't resent them. You understand them. You recognize the trembling behind the smile, the story behind the silence. And suddenly, compassion is no longer an effort. It's instinct. This is what it means to become whole. Not perfect, not pure, whole. To hold light and dark in the same trembling hands and call both sacred. The return to light is not about ascending, it's about integrating. To walk the world knowing you are both wound and healer, both shadow and sun, both the question and the answer. Jung wrote, "The sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of being." And now you understand what that means. The light you kindle is not just for yourself, it's for everyone still wandering. You become a torchbearer, not by preaching the light, but by embodying it, by showing that wholeness is possible, that it is not perfection that saves us, but honesty. So when you walk again into the noise of the world, remember, you are not returning as who you were. You are returning as who you have always been. The union of opposites, the harmony of chaos, the fire that learned to dance with its own shadow. And when people ask what changed, you'll smile, and maybe you'll say, "I stopped running from the dark." But deep down, you'll know the truth. You didn't escape the darkness. You became its light. In the end, you realize the journey was never about becoming anything at all. It was about remembering. Remembering that the darkness you feared was never outside you. It was the shadow cast by your own light. All along, you were both the dreamer and the dreamed, the seeker and the sought, the wound and the hand reaching to heal it. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And that truth lives within you too, for every part of your psyche that you finally dared to meet has transformed you. You are not the same one who began this journey. The mask has softened, the armor has cracked, and from within those cracks, something luminous breathes. You've learned that wholeness doesn't mean endless peace. It means endless participation. It means living wide open, eyes unguarded, heart unarmored, soul awake. You now understand that the shadow doesn't vanish. It walks beside you, hand in hand, as a quiet companion, a reminder that light needs contrast to be seen. And when you look at the world now, its chaos, its cruelty, its beauty, you no longer flinch. You recognize it as a mirror, because everything outside you is also within you. The wars, the tenderness, the creation, the decay, all of it lives here, in this small, infinite field of consciousness you call yourself. You are the storm and the stillness, the ashes and the spark, the silence that gives birth to sound. And maybe that's the final secret, that the darkness was never asking you to conquer it, only to witness it with love. So now, when you meet your reflection, in a mirror, in another soul, in the quiet of your own thoughts, you won't look away. You'll nod gently, as if greeting an old friend. And you'll whisper, "We made it." Because the truth is, you were never lost. You were never broken. You were never anything less than whole. You were only waiting to remember.